Hey fam, welcome to another episode of Good, Bad, and Ugly about real estate. Got a great guest for you today, my friend Ingryd Hernandez. How's it going, Ingryd?
It's going great. Thanks, Jose.
Trying to give you that awesome introduction. So me and Ingryd are both Owners Club members. We formally kind of got to know each other more recently, but we've interacted throughout the past year. So Ingryd, can you do us a favor and share your story with us, how you decided to get into real estate and stuff that you got going on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, firstly, I'm an immigrant to this country. So I actually got I finally got my citizenship a year ago. It took way too long. But I have been a real estate agent since 2013.
Okay.
I was a part-time agent for a long time before I started looking at things more like an investor. I had tried getting into investing or understanding investing like in 2015 and 2017, but it always felt like was really difficult to get investors to kind of tell me more about it. It was very, very much a gatekeeping culture.
Okay.
And then I think as folks like Pace Morby, Jerry Norton, the advent of YouTube coming and just people wanting and needing to share information to get views, I feel like a lot of that gatekeeping is kind of gone by the wayside for the most part. And so I took the opportunity to join the Sub 2 mentorship back in 2020. And so I feel like now I've really accomplished, the American dream, if you will, of when you come here as an immigrant, you're supposed to be the land of opportunity. And now it feels like that dream is definitely in my grasp.
That's awesome. So let's see, 13 years as an agent. Mm-hmm. So what made you or do you still work as an agent, or have you fully kind of transitioned to being just an investor?
I'm still an agent. I still actively work traditional deals, but not as many. I'm very blessed to also have my husband in real estate, and he has been 100% real estate agent since 2017. Because of my nature of not being shy around the camera and providing some marketing in our social media space, I still get traditional buyers and sellers, and I generally give them to my husband to manage. So that's kind of the way that we work our business. But second to that, because I speak Spanish, I still do work with our Spanish-speaking clients. Because my husband is not a Spanish speaker per se. So he knows some warehouse Spanish because that's kind of what his background was in before he became an agent. So, yeah.
Got you. So what is your focus in your investing in real estate right now?
Well, the last year I was fixing and flipping with a partner. That partner is now flipping on his own. And so I am actually pivoting to coaching agents. One of the things that I recognized in the last year after, by the way, I had a W-2. So it's also been a year since I've not had a W-2. But what I really recognize is that I love educating. It's why I've been able to do my podcast for, I don't know, more than 2 years now. And wow. It's one of the things that I look forward to the most. And generally speaking, it's because I can't wait to talk to people who have an expertise and kind of tease out a lot of that information out for folks to consume. And when I started looking back about like where our income was being generated and how I've been able to kind of pack my licensing punch, if you will. So for example, I'm a real estate agent, so I'm licensed in that world, but I'm also a licensed life insurance agent. And when I think about all the things that I've learned as a Sub 2 student, I am like really packed with info so that I can pivot in most any market. Not that I'm not flipping. I'm actually flipping a few properties right now, but I've partnered with someone else who's going to really just take that to the finish line. And then I can focus on what we call rainmaking, right? Like the marketing aspects, doing podcasts, helping other agents learn to think more like investors and how they can also generate more income streams by being a licensed insurance agent, for example. Every time we sell a property to a buyer, for example, we should be asking, so when are you getting your trust, right? Not if you trust. And that's really, in my opinion, providing complete fiduciary because you're also helping them protect their assets.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what exit strategies are you guys using? So you're doing fix and flips. Are you doing strategic? Goodness. Your standard just selling to an end buyer? Are you trying to do wraps? Because you said you talked about immigrants.
Yeah. In Arizona, sorry.
No, go ahead.
In Arizona, wraps are very difficult because the affordability range here is much higher. And so, not affordability range, but like the cost of assets are much higher. What we see are more wraps happening in states like Texas, where maybe their median price point is a little bit lower, depending on what metro you're in. Obviously, I'm not talking about Austin, but like other areas like Houston, where their price points can still be in the low 200s.
Right.
You're lucky if you even find anything like that here in Arizona, at least in the metro area. So my fixing and flipping is strictly for fixing and flipping and putting on market. And I'm also partnering with someone else out in other states like Ohio, West Virginia area, where they have a much stronger deal pipeline. And those fixing and flipping opportunities have similar profit goals that you would have here in Arizona, but at a much lower price point range. So those are secondary to what I'm doing, which is coaching agents this year.
You keep bringing the fact that you're coaching agents, but you're also coaching basically newbies in our community.
Yeah.
And you've been involved in the No One Left Behind challenge. Can you share with us your role there and how successful you've been?
Sure. So, of course, our mentor Pace Morby gets these harebrained ideas, and because he's such a good steward of our education, I would say. He reached out to me back in October and was like, "Hey, can you come?" And like, this is out of nowhere because I didn't know at the time what No One Left Behind challenge was. And he's like, "Hey, can you come to my house and help me coach these new people so that they know and feel comfortable about appointment setting with other agents?" And I was like, "Sure." So I headed out there. And so every month it's kind of evolved. So for the first few months, I was just a coach. So I was coaching folks that are brand new to real estate on how to make appointments with agents. And then it evolved because we were getting so many appointments and it was so successful in that way that then I ended up also needing to be a closer. So having the conversations with the agents and explaining what creative finance is, what a cash offer is, why it's a good, scenario for us as investors wanting to cash flow or wanting to flip. And so it's in my nature to have this sort of conversation. And a lot of those agents that I've spoken with since October are still in my, my CRM. And many of them actually want to do deals or want to own rentals themselves. Like I've been able to accumulate 10 rentals in the last, I had 12, but now I'm back to 10. We sold a couple off. And all of that was done in the last 3.5 years. So I feel for somebody who didn't know how to get started in real estate, like being able to have done that many or bought that many properties, more than 20 plus flips, and then wholesaling too, that I feel for the people who are doing real estate right now, if they're a licensed agent, it is my responsibility to pay it forward to them so that they can help pivot as we go through this challenging market. In 2024, more than 70% of agents didn't do one single transaction. Wow. And I felt terrible to hear that, especially when 2024, I mean, we were doing well with the transactions we had. and had, and so I feel like I need to pay it forward to other agents to understand how they can look at real estate in a much larger picture and how they can pivot and find other ways to make money. But back to the success of No One Left Behind challenge. For me, my success in it is the revelation I had of, hey, I should be doing more to help these agents, because every time I'm on the phone, I'm having to educate them. And I would say that's 90% of a closer's call is to educate agents on what these ways that we buy properties, and make them feel more comfortable with doing that type of transaction.
Gotcha. So I got a 3-tier question here.
Okay.
So closer, explain to the
Mm-hmm.
audience what a closer is, because they may not understand that term. And
Mm-hmm.
then on top of that, when you're closing, are you doing direct to seller, direct to agent?
Mm-hmm.
And then the end that question is, were you a closer before the challenge, or did you kind of develop into a closer? Because that's going to lead into my next question, of how you were on stage at Squad Up. So
Sure. Well, firstly, I've been licensed in real estate since 2013. So if you're a licensed agent, you're doing sales, and sales requires you to close on a potential lead. So I've been a closer. Plus, if you've seen my handsome husband, you'll see that I am a closer. Just kidding. So, a closer is somebody who can take a potential lead and actually make a contract out of it, right? And that means people have affirmed by signing the document that says you have a deal. Um, as far as the No One Left Behind challenge, that's only been direct to agent. When I first started in investing 3.5 years ago, when I got my very first deal back in September of 2021, um, I was doing direct to seller. So myself and my cousin David, I didn't know at the time, cousin by my husband's marriage, or like me being married to my husband. I accidentally ran into him in like a Zoom that we were having with Pace, and I was like, David, is that you? And come to find out, he was paying for leads that he was doing nothing with. And I was like, wait, what? And so I started helping him pay for those leads. And then, you know, despite me saying, wait, what? Like, even I had trouble getting on the phone, especially having been an agent. And through my agent work, most of the listings or buyers that I had is what we call like warm sphere of influence, meaning they're friends and family, or they're recommended by another friend and family. So I'm not cold calling anybody out of the blue. So calling direct to sellers, that's called DTS, at that time felt very uncomfortable for me to do that. I had done some expired and for sale by owner, or FSBOs, as an agent when I first started, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the uncomfortable conversations, or the fact that they would get upset over getting these phone calls. Um, but I literally, when I committed myself to calling these sellers, on the fourth day, I got my first contract. So it was like, once I said, okay, after my W-2, 4:30 to 7, I'm calling. And then literally at 6:58, um, on the sorry, the screen changed at 6:58 p.m. on a Thursday, I decided to make that one last call, and that was the first contract I got, which was our first flip, and we made eventually $54,000 of that first flip, and it was a virtual flip in Vegas. And then I think your last question was, was I a closer before or after? Of course, I mentioned when you're in sales and you're getting deals done, you're definitely a closer. But DTA is direct to agent. And for the most part, the DTA aspect of it is calling out agents, and the No One Left Behind challenge is a DTA process. So, yeah. Are you still there, Jose? I think we lost Jose. Maybe now it's the real estate podcast with Ingrid instead of Jose. I don't know where he's gone. Jose. Maybe this part gets edited. I think I answered all the questions. Something I'll add while we wait for Jose is the more I informed myself about cash and creative deals, the more natural and confident I am on the phone about closing on deals, because it comes with a level of confidence and understanding, because I took the time to know how to underwrite a deal and to know what kind of deal something is when I have that opportunity in front of me. So if you're somebody who isn't sure or doesn't know how to close a deal, it might mean that you lack the skill, and you should probably connect with someone like Jose and help build their appointments so that they can close those deals for you and you can learn from them closing those deals.
So I appreciate you sharing that with me and the audience. So the reason why I ask you those questions about being a closer is because, I sat there in the audience at Squad Up Summit in Dallas. You're one of the panelists. So congratulations on that. And you take to being a closer for some people, that's a hard thing to do. You're able to talk to somebody you've never talked to before and present them with an offer and explain to them why you feel that's a good offer and a win-win situation. So is that what you mean when you say that you, as an agent, you're in sales because you know how to present what you're trying to offer well, or is that a skill set you developed over the time being in the sub-2 community?
Well, I would say that it's something that I've been working on all my life. Whether or not you think you're in sales or not, everyone is in sales to some extent. You're, as a parent, in your W-2, when for example, every time I got a promotion, when I had a W-2, I would always negotiate it, right? So it's all about influence. In my opinion, sales is just influence, which is, how good can you influence somebody to be on on the same page you are or not. But like anything, you can get better at it. And I don't care who you are. You could be a straight up nerd, extremely introverted, and never have done sales in the more formal sense, and you can still become a closer and be really good at it. There's been plenty of examples of folks who just worked on it. Like for me, it's just a skill set. You just have to work at it. As far as sending an offer, when I was at Squad Up Summit and took a lead Zolo lead, literally is the company who is sponsoring that segment. I've never worked with them before, but in fact, I haven't done direct to selling since I was direct to selling during this period, 3.5 years ago. So I hadn't actually called a direct to seller cold call since then. I just don't. I talk with agents, I talk to wholesalers, and because I'm solution centric, people come to me with their problems and, like, hey, I need you to talk to this agent and explain to them what creative finance is, or hey, I need you to talk to the seller and explain to them what cash offer or creative finance is. And so usually people are coming to me asking me to join in a conversation that has already started, if you will. So, yeah, it was cool to be put in that position. But again, one of the things that I described is if you really focus on understanding the problems you're solving and learn how to comp, learn how to underwrite, but beyond that, learn how to tease out what problem you're trying to solve for that seller, the conversations are usually not that difficult to have.
Yeah, because it seemed like you already had all the tools you needed. As soon as they said one thing, you're like, "Well, what about this?" And um, we could do this, and you just kind of just kept the conversation going, pulling out numbers and getting it down to where you needed to be, and kind of like watching you and Jerry just kind of almost kind of like fight it out, right? You're like, I'm gonna get this one before you get yours, kind of thing. It was
Oh
awesome.
yeah, it was definitely competitive. I actually got that seller under contract, so now we're just working through this. And I've been very, very upfront and honest with the seller. Like we actually did a Google Meet call like Monday of this past week.
Oh, cool.
And I explained to him the contract, and then I said to him like, I'm not your actual end buyer. My goal is to go find another family who needs to find a house like yours, 3 bed, 2 bath with the fourth room you could easily convert. They have an extra bonus room in that house, down in Little Elm, Texas. So I told him because of his mortgage, it just doesn't work for an investor, but a family who may need to get into a house like that, independent of an investor, may be able to bring in the 25 to 30K it takes to buy that house. So that's kind of where we are at right now, and we're marketing it.
And is that your niche? Basically, helping one family get out of one property and helping another family get into it.
I wouldn't say it's my niche, but it's what the market is serving up right now in the state of Arizona and in states like Texas, where affordability has become a problem. I feel like my niche is figuring out the solution for the problems people have. I have an example where I have an investor who over collateralized one of his properties. He shouldn't have done that. And now I helped him raise capital to figure out how to get him out of default and help him get a DSCR in place so that he could properly mitigate how he's managing that debt against the townhouse. So for me, which is funny because I've actually been thinking about this a lot. I've played sports all my life, and for the most part, like I did specialize in some things, but I'm also a very good utility player.
Right.
So I feel like when people bring me problems, I just use a lot of the logic, the reasoning, and the education I've poured into myself to like learn about as many things as I can in real estate and wealth management, and then just try to figure out if I can solve the problem. And if I personally can't solve the problem, I will bring in other folks that I've networked with. So, like in the example with the over leveraged investor or over collateralized investor, I have really great and amazing contacts who know how to do DSCRs, who could do hard money loans. And so connecting them in that regard is sort of what I feel I can do.
Awesome. Well, the name of the channel is Good, Bad, and Ugly about real estate, and you've been in for a minute in the game. Can you share with us maybe your more was there a favorable or exciting memory of your career, and then maybe something that was not so great but you learned a lot from?
Sure. I think one of my favorite transactions was when we essentially rescued a gal from a project that she didn't have the skill sets to complete. So there was a seller out in Sedona who was in the pre-foreclosure list. This was in 2020, early 2022. Pace Morby and Cody Barton at the time were sharing data lists, and their goal was to, create more opportunities for people to get more deals done. And so they shared a pre-foreclosure list that was all inclusive in Arizona. And I had this young man who was constantly in my DMs saying, "Hey, how can I help you? Hey, how can I help you?" And because I wasn't as organized or understood how I could leverage his support, once that data came out, then it was free. I was like, "Here, call this pre-foreclosure list and let me know if you find something." So what he did, and that was a Monday it was a Sunday that they shared that data, because it was like Sunday nights that they would
Sure.
have the podcast that they were on called Sunday Service. So they sent out that list. I shared it with this young man. His name is Dario. Dario is also an immigrant here. He was actually working through getting his green card at the time, so he was documented for the record, and didn't and broke, or excuse me, and spoke broken English, but that didn't deter him. So I sent him this list, And instead of starting from the top to the bottom, he started from the bottom to the top. So that was his strategy, which he talks about. And literally spoke with the seller for 5 minutes and gave me the call to call her. So he gave me that warm transfer, if you will. I spoke with the seller, and because it was a type of project that I wasn't familiar with, I actually thought it was a land deal. I texted my good friend Anthony Pappas, and I was like, "Hey, I have this deal. Here's the property." And then she's describing her problem, which was she broke a lot of relationships, unfortunately, and she had all these permits and everything that was coming due. She'd fallen behind being able to pay for this construction loan, and so a lot of chips were stacked against her. And I said, "Well, what dollar figure will help you move on?" And she said 1.3 million. At that moment, I had never done a deal into the millions, and so it was something, that broke sort of some of my brain barriers, if you will. I texted, and this is the importance of having really great people to help you. I texted Anthony and I said, "Hey, Anthony, here's the property, here's the situation." It was a development deal, which is a property that's already, so it is land, but it's entitled land, and they had already done some things. And normally when you're trying to buy a property like that, it's going to take at minimum 45 to 60 days. And we didn't have that kind of range because of the permits that were coming to close. And that's why, like, Anthony was a pretty badass to know, because once I told him, "Hey, she wants 1.3, he got on it and he was like, "Lock it up." So he sent me the contract he normally uses. I walked her through the contract. We signed it. And then he got to work. At first, he did have somebody to buy it, and I had already told Dario that he would get 20% of whatever we made. And at the time, it was $50,000 that we were going to make, and so Dario was going to walk with 10 grand. And that's what I had communicated. Then our buyer actually walked off, like didn't perform. Anthony calls me and he's like, "Hey, I have some bad news and I have some good news. What do you want first?" I was like, "Well, hit me with the bad. What's happening?" So the buyer left, and then he's like, "But the good news is I reevaluated this deal and we were underselling it. So I got a new buyer, and the wholesale fee is actually going to be 250,000." I was like, "What?"
Wow.
Yeah. So we were able to give Dario $50,000, which he didn't know was coming. As far as he's concerned, we're closing this deal and it's going to be 10 grand. And so I got to go on an Instagram live, which is still on my Instagram. I got to surprise him with a much bigger wholesale fee, which helps solve a lot of his personal problems, when you're getting 50 grand. And then myself and Anthony shared 100 grand each. Now, there was a lot of other behind the scenes stuff that was happening with the seller and the new buyer, and then the urgency of closing this quickly so that a lot of the permits that were outstanding could still be leveraged. But that's where Anthony was a true professional. He took care of it. I didn't have to deal with any of it. And then after we closed, I was trying to break my kids' brains, and I was like, "Guys, I spent 33 minutes on this deal and I made 100 grand." Like, I wanted them to see that the bigger the problems you solve, the bigger the paychecks you'll get. And so, and how that translates. So that's my favorite story to tell, just because it had so much involved. It was a true collaboration, true partnership, and everyone kind of going for like the right vision of getting it done. So that's my favorite story to tell.
And then the impact to the guy that called the list, that, like you said, that sometimes that's life-changing money right there. So
Yeah, absolutely. So it also kind of messes up with you. And that was his very first deal. His very first deal was 50 grand, but my very first deal was also 54,000. Like, I did the virtual flip in Vegas, the first deal I got under contract, where I had done some of the right things, which was get in the right relationships. I had a private money lender who was ready to lend me money. And so I was, luck finds those people who are prepared. So,
Sure, absolutely.
yeah.
So now for the ugly one.
The ugly, oh my gosh. So I lost almost $55,000 in Round Rock, Texas. And that was a flip that um, it turned bad because a couple of factors. One, I really think that looking back, what could I have done differently is I should have really connected that person with someone more locally instead of only looking at the dollar figures. I was super excited. So that property was supposed to be a triple digit, like $167,000, I think, after flipping it. And it was going to be a cosmetic. It was when Austin was going really, really high. Like we were catching it, you know?
Yeah.
And the trouble was that there was title problems. So the seller didn't disclose, like, even with the title problems, actually, though. But the seller didn't disclose he had $132,000 worth of judgments and liens and stuff that we needed to work through. That was one of the problems. The other is that at that time, unprecedented things happen. Okay. Unprecedented. And that is that the Federal Reserve changed the interest rate more than 2.5%, I believe it was,
Wow.
in the summer of 2022, right? We went from rates being in the fours to like six and a half or
Yeah.
something in a matter of months. And that has never in the history of interest rates has that happened.
Right.
Generally speaking, to take such a spike, it takes years. It doesn't take months. And we did it in months. So that was the type of environment we were in. So I was up against economic environments. And then the other problem for me was that I partnered with somebody who was too reserved. Like I needed him to go out there, put like bandit signs up, be prepared for like trying to maybe even having to wrap this deal. And he just wasn't willing or able to do some of those things. What I could have done better, I should have flown down to Texas and done it myself, to be honest with you, because it was
Yeah.
hard to find people who were willing to partner up. I didn't have a strong enough network in that area. Now I actually do, but at the time I didn't. And that should have been my first reasoning to say, hey, this is a really great deal, but let me find you someone more local and gotten paid maybe just to be a connector of that deal instead of putting risk. Now, from an underwriting perspective, I'm glad I only lost $55,000 because had we bought it wrong, it would have been a lot worse. But I made sure that my private money lender was paid out, which was around $100,000 that I owed. And so I was still able to get out of it, but it was painful, right?
Sure.
Like taking, like, I think again, I closed one so good, and my best closing was my husband, right? Because I recall like feeling so much guilt and shame that I would have lost us so much money. And he was like, no, babe, like I'm the one who pushed us to do flips. Like we've talked about this. This is our, mistake
Right.
together. And so taking nightly walks and like crying it out with my husband, I think it actually made our relationship so much stronger despite the terribleness that this put us through. So I would say that's probably the silver lining in that transaction.
That's crazy. It's funny too because you start talking and I was like, "Yep, been there. Yep, been done that."
Hmm.
And I did fly up. This was in my bad story is in Minnesota, and I did fly, and it still didn't help the
Mm,
situation that I was in. So I can truly relate to that story,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Hmm.
So, um, one of the things that we were asked in is actually probably before Boston was, "What is your Mount Everest?" So I'll ask you that. What is your Mount Everest? What are you trying to accomplish?
Sure. So my Mount Everest has evolved from the first year I was in Owners Club, and I'm still kind of putting the pieces together. Again, I want to empower more licensed agents. And you know this, Jose, being even in the space that we're in. Wholesalers and investors and agents, and I say investors, but I put wholesalers and investors in the same bucket, and then agents in another. For whatever reason, we feel like we like our points of view are not as integrated, which really annoys me. Because I feel like we can serve each other so much more if we had more compatibility and understanding. So part of my goal, and I still haven't put like strong numbers to it, but if I had to, I'd be like, I would love to teach 1,000 agents to think more like an investor and understand how to underwrite like an investor and understand what creative finance is, and then let them know that there's other verticals of income that can help them pivot when markets are shifting. So that's how I'll say survived and thrived, because I've put the time and effort to educate myself about other ways of making money and how my being licensed is actually a benefit in the marketplace because I'm expected to operate at a much higher ethical level than those who don't have that license. And so I feel like that is the credibility that I put into any closing transaction that I'm putting together. It's like I'm just closing, I'm a licensed agent. I make sure people feel like there's extreme transparency in the transactions that I do. And that's just how I operate. So I feel like I'm in a good position to be the kind of person who can educate these agents about how they can better, better prepare for a market shift and be able to provide for their families.
Awesome. So that same trip, we were also asked, what are your needs? So you provided everything. You're a coach, right? Trying to help other people grow in their business. So what can somebody bring to Ingryd that would help you in your business and um, make this a good year for you?
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you asking the question. I would say if you're a licensed agent, check out totalagentcoach.com. I've started a wait list for folks so that if and when they're ready to pursue learning how to become an investor or working with investors, that we will be contacting you to let you know how you can get involved. Second to that is I am starting to raise capital. And so folks who have opportunities for investing into the deals that I'm helping put together, it's just a matter of reaching out to me. So following me or DMing me on Ingryd Hernandez on Instagram, and then I'll make sure I can present those opportunities to them.
Awesome. And if they wanted to collaborate with you or partner with you, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so Ingryd Hernandez on Instagram. My first name is Ingryd. I think I'm the only one with the Y. And yeah, you could just slide into the DMs. Again, I am flipping, but they kind of have to be home run types of flips. And I have a couple of partners out in Ohio and one here in Arizona where we're doing flipping deals with. I have to update my buy box on my Instagram, but you can find my buy box in the very first post of my Instagram.
Awesome. Well, Ingryd, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know I've been trying to get a hold of you to do this for a while, so I know that you have to kind of prioritize what you got going on each day and each week. So it means a lot to me that you've taken this time to share with your story with us, me, and the audience. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this for me. And to the audience, thanks for showing up for another episode, and we'll see you next time.